Okay, so you know how you sent over those reports on agrochemical safety training?
Yeah.
Well, there was something that really jumped out at us right away.
Hmm.
It was this whole problem about how a major agrochemical company, like one of the big players, discovered that the safety training they were doing just wasn't cutting it anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't keeping up with the times.
Right, right.
And the way we see it, that has some pretty big consequences.
Oh, I bet. For sure, yeah.
Not only for the effectiveness of their products, but even more so, I mean, way more importantly, for the safety of the people who are actually using them, the farmers and the workers out there in the fields.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a really crucial point. And it's all happening against a backdrop of, well, some significant market dynamics. I mean, think about it. The global market for agrochemicals is enormous.
Huge, yeah.
We're talking like $254.2 billion just in 2024 alone.
Wow.
And projections show it's going to keep growing all the way to $312.2 billion by 2031.
Yeah, I saw those numbers.
So you've got this annual growth rate, 3.5%. It's called the CAGR, the compound annual growth rate, which really emphasizes just how much these products are being used.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
And that's exactly why safe and effective use is, well, it becomes absolutely paramount for everybody involved.
Totally, yeah. So what we really want to do in this deep dive is look at how one specific company decided to tackle this training problem.
Okay, sounds good.
I mean, they recognized this gap and took some pretty significant steps to fix it.
Right.
And it really gets you thinking about what it all means for the bigger picture, for the industry as a whole, and at the end of the day, for the people who are handling these chemicals every single day.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really smart approach. One thing that really struck me right off the bat was how proactive this manufacturer was being.
Yeah.
They weren't just sitting around waiting for a disaster to happen or something. They were actively looking for solutions.
Taking the initiative, huh?
Exactly. The material we're looking at really highlights their commitment to both safety and productivity in agriculture, and they're intertwined.
Yeah, I see that.
It's not just about ticking boxes for them. It's about genuinely believing that safety is essential for progress.
Right.
It's like they see safety as this key factor that lets them develop new products that are more advanced and probably a lot more effective too.
Makes sense.
And let's not forget, their clients, the farmers using these products, they depend on the company to provide solutions that get the job done and are safe to handle.
So let me just make sure I'm following you. It sounds like this outdated training was actually holding them back.
In a way, yeah.
Like if the people using these products aren't totally up to speed on the latest safety stuff, then they might hesitate to use these newer, more effective agrochemicals.
Exactly. That's a great point. There could be a real reluctance to adopt the latest innovations if they don't feel confident about using them safely.
Yeah, and that could really limit the company's ability to grow and innovate.
Absolutely. That's spot on. The material we have really makes it clear that without proper training that covers all the modern practices, even the most cutting-edge agrochemical could end up being more of a risk than a benefit.
Yeah,
And that directly affects the manufacturer's reputation
of course.
and their ability to contribute to sustainable agriculture, something that you and I both know is becoming more and more critical.
Okay, so how did they go about fixing this?
Well, it looks like they brought in some experts,
Okay.
cognitive market research.
And what was their approach? What did they actually do?
So they did this really thorough study, like a multi-phase study, to really get to the bottom of things.
Right.
And it was tailored specifically to meet the manufacturer's needs,
Mhm.
not just a generic solution.
Got it.
They wanted to figure out exactly what was going wrong and come up with a workable solution that would make the training better and ultimately lead to wider adoption of the company's products.
Okay, and this multi-phase study, it started with a market analysis, right?
Yeah, that was the first step.
What did that involve?
So basically, they took a deep dive into the existing training landscape, trying to find out where the gaps were.
In terms of modern safety practices.
Exactly, yeah.
Makes sense.
But they didn't just sit in a room and read reports. They went out and talked to the people involved, the stakeholders.
Gotcha. So who did they talk to?
Well, for starters, they talked to agricultural safety experts, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But they also reached out directly to farm operators, the folks who are actually using the products day in and day out, and they talked to the people providing the training as well.
So they got a full picture of the problem, like from every angle.
Exactly. Talking to all those different groups gave them a really well-rounded understanding of the situation.
I like that multifaceted approach. So What came after this initial analysis?
So after that, they moved on to benchmarks.
Benchmarking.
Yeah, they looked at successful agrochemical safety practices from all over the world.
Wow, globally.
Yeah, and they focused on regions that had really high levels of safety in agrochemical use.
So they were looking for best practices, basically.
Exactly. They wanted to understand why these regions were doing so well and what factors were contributing to their success.
Okay, so what did they find? What were the key takeaways from these high-performing regions?
Well, the material points to a few things that stood out.
Hmm.
One big thing was the use of digital tools in the training process, which is, super important these days,
Yeah, yeah.
especially when you need to reach people who are spread out over large areas.
Right.
Another crucial element was hands-on practical training.
Because just knowing the theory isn't enough when you're dealing with potentially dangerous chemicals, right?
Yeah, exactly. You need to be able to apply that knowledge in a real-world setting.
Makes sense.
And then there was the constant updating of the training material, keeping it fresh and relevant.
To keep pace with the latest safety guidelines and new products. Okay, so they found these areas needing improvement. They looked at these awesome examples of training programs. What was the next step in pulling it all together for this company?
So, based on all the insights they gathered from the analysis and the benchmarking, Cognitive Market Research went ahead and developed a custom training framework specifically for their client.
Tailored just for them.
Yeah, not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So what were the key elements of this framework?
Well, it included a bunch of updated safety protocols that had probably been lacking before,
Mm,
like making sure people knew how to use advanced protective equipment properly.
right.
And they also incorporated real-time monitoring of chemical exposure, which is a huge step forward for worker safety.
Totally.
And of course, they included the latest digital training tech to make the training more accessible and engaging.
So stuff like interactive simulations and maybe even training modules you can access on your phone.
Exactly. Those kind of tools that can make learning more effective and more enjoyable.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a much more comprehensive and modern approach.
Yeah.
And they also designed it to be adaptable and scalable, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They wanted it to work for different types of agricultural operations, big or small, no matter where they were located.
That makes sense.
And the scalability is really important for a big company with lots of different customers.
Okay, so they create this framework, but did they actually help the company put it into practice?
Yeah, they didn't just hand it over and say, good luck. They provided ongoing support, helped the client run pilot programs.
To test it out in real-world situations.
Exactly. Get feedback before rolling it out on a larger scale.
So they were really committed to making sure it worked.
Yeah, and they also set up a system for monitoring and evaluation to track how effective the training was and make improvements as needed.
A feedback loop.
Right, so it's not a static solution. It can evolve over time.
I see. Okay, let's talk about their research methodology for a bit. The document mentions a four-step process. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So step one was data collection,
Uh-huh.
gathering as much information as possible about the current state of safety training.
Right.
They used surveys to reach a lot of people, did interviews to get more in-depth insights, and held focus groups to hear from experts, trainers, and the workers themselves.
So they were thorough. They wanted to understand everything from multiple perspectives.
Absolutely.
Okay, what was step two?
Step two was comparative analysis, the benchmarking we talked about before. They took what they learned from their client and compared it to the training programs in regions and industries that were known for being super safe.
Right.
They looked at the content of the training, how it was delivered, and what the actual results were.
And in those high-performing programs, what aspects were they particularly interested in?
Well, the use of simulations really stood out.
Yeah, so trainees could practice different scenarios in a safe environment.
Exactly. They also looked at the use of digital tools, again, because of their reach and engagement factor. And then the importance of refresher courses to keep everyone's knowledge up to date.
Gotcha. So they gathered all this data, identified these best practices. Step three was building the personalized framework. What guided them in creating that?
The whole framework was designed around those best practices they identified. A big principle was modularity, so the content could be easily updated as things changed.
Makes sense.
They also included different modules for different types of workers, recognizing that not everyone needs the same level of training.
Right. A farm manager might need different training than someone who's just applying the chemicals, right?
Yeah, exactly. The goal was to make sure everyone got training that was relevant to their role.
And step four was pilot testing.
Yeah, they took the framework and tested it out in real agricultural settings.
In a few different places.
Yeah, to see how it worked in practice.
Okay.
And they got feedback from the people who participated in the pilot programs.
So they can make adjustments and improve the training.
Exactly. It was an iterative process to fine-tune everything.
So after all this research and development, what were the outcomes, the results?
Well, the results were really positive. They saw a big improvement in both safety and efficiency
Yeah,
and how the agrochemicals were being used.
that's great.
And that led to a significant drop in accidents and misuse, which is obviously a great thing for the health and safety of the workers.
A major win.
Yeah. And there were other benefits for the manufacturer, too.
Hmm.
Because people felt more confident about using the product safely, they were more likely to adopt the company's newer, more advanced solutions.
That's interesting. So safety actually drove innovation and adoption.
Exactly.
I see. And did that translate into business success for the manufacturer?
It did. It boosted their sales, of course, but it also strengthened their reputation as a company that cares about sustainability and worker well-being.
So investing in safety actually paid off in multiple ways.
Right. And by incorporating all this new technology and the latest safety practices, they basically set a new standard for the industry.
Wow.
They became known as leaders in agrochemical safety.
And I'm guessing this proactiveness also helped them build better relationships with regulators and other stakeholders.
Definitely. By demonstrating their commitment to safety and investing in proper training, they built trust and credibility.
That makes sense. Let's shift gears a little and talk about the market opportunities for the client. We saw those figures about the projected growth in the agrochemicals market.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a lot of growth, potentially billions of dollars.
It is. And the work that cognitive market research did really positioned their client to capitalize on that growth.
By ensuring their customers knew how to use the products safely and effectively.
Exactly. So it wasn't just about mitigating risk. It was about actively taking advantage of a growing market.
By turning a potential liability into a competitive advantage.
Precisely.
Well, this whole deep dive has really highlighted something important for me, and that is the crucial role of up-to-date and comprehensive safety training in this industry.
Yeah. It's not an afterthought. It's essential.
It's about maximizing the benefits of these products while minimizing the risks for the people who use them. And it's been fascinating to see how a research-based approach can have such a positive impact.
It shows that when companies prioritize the well-being of their customers, everyone benefits.
So as we think about this projected growth, it really makes you wonder, how important is it for the industry to keep adapting and improving these training programs?
It's going to be absolutely crucial. The industry can't afford to stand still.
It needs to be an ongoing process.
Exactly. Continuously improving, integrating new technologies, and staying on top of the latest safety knowledge. That's the key to a safer and more sustainable future for agriculture worldwide.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with me. It's a great reminder that technology, training, and safety are all connected, and that applies to all sorts of industries, not just agrochemicals. Until next time,
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
take care.
You too.